A very warm welcome here from the Spanish pavilion. My name is Carsten Rothballer. I'm coming from ICLE Europe and I will be moderating this exciting session. Keep building resilient urban energy systems. Resilient energy is often overlooked, and today at COP30 we are going to take a deeper dive into it. I'm very happy to have a very special panel selected for you. We will showcase real-world examples how cities can develop resilient energy systems in the face of climate shocks and instability. We are offering, through the panelists and also through a guide which we will release today, guidance to secure, reliable, equable, and sustainable energy. We are going to have the following. We're going to have statements, then we are going to have a dive into different perspectives, looking at governance models, looking at finance, and making a short outlook into the future. And the novelty of this panel is also that I don't need to break my tongue, because we have representatives from various countries surrounded here, and they will introduce themselves, speaking their mother tongue and pronouncing their name in the true sense that is needed, but telling also who they are, why they are here, and what is the connection that brought them here to the energy resilience. So we just walk the talk, hear the tour, and I start here. Who are you?
Hi, can you hear me? Yes? So, first of all, thanks for inviting us. I guess this is now a short introduction. So, my name is Guille Lopez. I come from Barcelona's metropolitan area. It's the 36 cities around Barcelona. 3.4 million people, and we are in the government there, and as we will go through later, we have a climate action team that today came with me, and we will share our policies. Okay.
Sí, sí.
All right, well, thank you so much for this invitation. It is a pleasure to be in Spain's pavilion. Both of my daughters spent a semester in Spain, one in Madrid and one in Sevilla, so it's a real pleasure. My name is Vicky Vinker. I am the Vice Mayor of Palo Alto, California. I am also the Vice Chair of the Board of the Bay Area Air District. So the Air District has been coming to COP for years. We care deeply about air quality as well as climate. They are co-benefits. We work together on them, and so that's what connects us here. And I'm also on the board of the Northern California Power Agency. I'll talk more about that later. So that's the connection to energy, publicly owned power. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Pedro Jacobi. I'm an academician, and I am president of the board of ICLE South America since 2011. ICLE is here being a partner, has been very active in South America. We have now 170 cities that are within the agenda of ICLE, and the agenda has been very strongly into issues linked to climate planning, and also into emissions. But it's also very involved with circular economy and resilience in cities. And Brazil has been very strongly affected by extreme events, and this has been an important role of ICLE.
Thank you, first of all, inviting also Finland and Business Tampere as part of this panel. We are very excited to share our let's say, point of view. And of course, we as we kind of we have a strong message that also the small countries can be innovative and build ecosystems around energy and at the same time reduce the emissions. Business Tampere is owned by 8 cities and municipalities, and we work together with them towards these targets. And I'm the Chief Business Development Officer of Business Tampere and leading these actions on behalf of Business Tampere.
Okay, good afternoon.
He's Roberto Gaudio. I'm translating because he speaks only in Spanish. Secretary of Environment and Waste Management of Quilmes local government in Argentina. He's really thankful for the invitation, especially to ICLEI. And he's going to explain a little bit about challenges in informal settlements and housing and access to energy and resilience in that context.
Hola.
Okay, then we do it like this. Wonderful. Thank you so much for these different introductions. You can see we have various people here on the panel. And also thank you, by the way, for being resilient, fighting against noise and the infrastructure, which sometimes is also need to be treated with kindness in order to endure it. But let's listen further to the statements of each of you concerning what is the role of your organization to build energy resilient systems. How do you analyze the potential of being at risks and actually being able to adapt? And what are your strategy as an organization to deal with the identified risks? So please be as concrete as possible. Maybe you have one or two examples that exemplifies what you are talking about. And let's maybe start with Ricky, and then we do a little bit of ping pong to make it exciting.
Well, thank you so much. So I'm going to speak from the perspective of the city of Palo Alto, which many of you likely know is the birthplace of Silicon Valley. So we have many tech companies, Hewlett-Packard. We also are the home of Stanford University. So we have a lot of retired engineers that have decided their mission in retirement is to help us with our climate programs. And it has been quite magnificent, actually. But we pride ourselves that we are the only city in the state of California that owns all of its own utilities, including the electric utility. And the electric utility is 125 years old. It's a third of our budget, about 300, it's more than 300 million. But we have been carbon neutral in our electric portfolio since 2013. So we're very, very proud of that. And it's meant a great deal to us. And one of the ways we do that is we are members of a joint powers authority called the Northern California Power Agency. So it's a coalition of cities, but also entities like our, what we call the Bay Area Rapid Transit Authority, so it's a transportation entity, the Port of Oakland. So we all band together to for distribution and generation and joint purchase of various power projects. So that's how we've been able to manage to do some creative things. So we've done everything, I'll talk more about it later, but from on-bill financing for equity and access purposes to joining with some of our fellow members of our power agency to buy into large battery storage projects. So we do a lot of those things. But more locally, just to give you a little bit of an idea about some of our resilience challenges, so Palo Alto is located on San Francisco Bay, and we have Bayshore, but our city goes all the way up into the foothills where there are severe wildfire risks. And you all know about the tragic wildfires in Southern California, and we are trying to prevent and avoid that in Northern California. So we've done a lot of things to introduce resilience in Northern California. One of the things we've done is we've involved a lot of technology in our grid, advanced metering and things so that we can see when demands go up. We have adopted some very advanced sensors in our foothills that detect smoke and heat so we can give advance notice of that. So we are doing a lot of things along those lines that we're quite proud of. So I also want to talk about the local project. We are modernizing our whole grid. So we unfortunately picked a time when supply chain and tariffs caused us to have some difficulties, but we recently completed a pilot project. And so we are upgrading the grid. It was at a time that the infrastructure needed to be updated. And so what we did is we just enhanced the transformers, the poles, the undergrounding where we could to make it more reliable and resilient. We've also done things like we have a second transmission line coming into the city. Back in, I think it was about 10 years ago, a small plane hit the transmission line coming into Palo Alto. That is not a good thing for residents or the tech companies that live there. So we have gotten approval from our state authority to do that. And so that should come online in about 5 years. It was originally projected to be 10, but we've been able to shorten that. So those are primarily the things that we've been doing. I guess I would close with, we started several years ago to create a reliability and resiliency strategic plan where we sat back and looked at all of these things I've been describing and mapped out how and when we would do it and also how we would finance it. And so that has been something that our community members have given us feedback on, our council committee has looked at, and we have passed and are now living into so that we can achieve all of these projects that I've described. So that's what we're doing in Palo Alto.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think there were many valuable hints already of how structurally one should approach and plan energy resilience towards financing that energy resilience, but also listening to the communities next to the council. So thank you for that. Then let's take a jump over the pond, so to say, and look at Tampere and Marita. Maybe you take that mic and I keep this one.
Let's see if this works. Excellent. Yeah, thank you for being second in a row. Of course, Finland is very interesting country for any investments around electricity and electrification, and that's one of the reasons being that we are the cheapest what comes to the electricity prices in Europe, and then of course we are sized. Our country is size of Japan. In Japan, there's 120 million people living. In Finland, there's 5 million people living. But we have thousands, we have thousands lakes and a lot of woods. And of course, that altogether, let's say, is a good ground, for instance, for hydrogen-related development in ecosystem. On the other hand, it's very cold in Finland, so at the moment, it's minus degrees, and district heating is overall, let's say, a big part of our energy systems, and our let's say cities and municipalities are doing a lot of work in order to, let's say, be carbon neutral by 2035. And of those, the biggest reductions are coming from traffic and the heating systems. So we in Business Tampere, we are looking those let's say emissions as a feedstock, for instance, to e-fuel companies, and as the heating is either bio-based or it's electricity based, so we can basically use the bio-based CO2 for making eSAF or eLNG or e-methane. And those opportunities we are now, let's say, capitalizing. So reducing emissions can be also opportunity for your businesses and for your ecosystem. And at the same time, of course, hydrogen, when you produce hydrogen, it generates a lot of heat. So we can absorb all that waste heat also in our district heating system. And as the let's say biomass is to be reduced by the power plant as they turn to electricity, we actually now are implementing companies who are making biochar out of the biomass. And actually that biochar can be used, for instance, in steel industry, replacing the coke. So we are on the way to develop quite interesting ecosystems around circular energy, and it's all has been happening very fast, and we're happy to work with one Norwegian company who is now planning 3 large-scale e-methane plants in Finland, and with one Finnish company with the same size of let's say plant. And of course we have the natural gas pipeline from Tampere down to Europe, all the way to Europe. So we can be also a producer for synthetic e-methane also for Europe. So pretty interesting time in this respect to develop this, let's say, energy systems. And one thing what I see is that the new energy systems, they are distributed and not anymore like big one where you have an oil plant in somewhere, a big oil plant. You have distributed systems. So also, let's say the small cities can participate the emission reduction when they have, let's say, electricity and water available. And that develops a totally new, let's say, opportunity also for big cities and for small cities.
Thank you so much here for highlighting several aspects, which some of them I would like actually to tease upon. Also advocating for the resilient energy system to be a sustainable energy system. So there is no either or, it needs to go hand in hand. And actually threats might be the affordability. So that is something which we are going to discuss further. But I want to make the point that actually you talked about not only electricity but also heating and cooling. Coupling those will make our system more flexible and therefore resilient towards its need. You were also mentioning the use of excess heat. In Europe, we are producing electricity and have been producing electricity in the past even more from coal-fired power plants. And actually, the heat they just wasted into the air could have heated the entire building stock of Europe. So using the excess heat is definitely something which is certainly on our agenda and should be on our agenda in terms of hierarchy of building a resilient energy system. First of all, we should look at sufficiency. Don't use energy where we don't, or just use energy there where we really need it. Then when we use it as efficient as possible. Then we may create circular loops, integrating, not wasting. Someone needs coal, by that we are producing heat, and having circular systems. Building on 100% renewable energy and integrating that with smart smartness, so to say, intelligent sensoring was mentioned here already, to build in a complex system. But let's jump further back to the pond, over the pond to Roberto in Argentina. How are you planning energy resilient systems?
Ok. Buenas tardes otra vez. Un poco agradecer que nos hayan invitado desde Quilmes, Argentina. Nosotros venimos a plantear también no solo las experiencias que podemos contar como interesantes, sino que nos interesa plantear los desafíos que tenemos por delante.
Hi, for those who are late, I'm going to be translating live what he's sharing. He is interested not only in talking about the situation that we have until now, but also focusing on challenges, that we have a lot of challenges ahead in Argentina.
Sobre todo el rol de los estados locales, el rol de los gobiernos subnacionales en las soluciones y en los aportes que podemos hacer a la construcción de una ciudad, como en este caso se plantea, que tenga eficiencia, que tenga resiliencia en términos energéticos. Nosotros trabajamos fuertemente desde Quilmes en la reducción de la huella de carbón durante el año 2025. Trabajamos también en el uso de energías alternativas, pero lo que nos interesa es plantear esta cuestión de eficiencia y que alcance el sistema energético frente a estados que no tienen todas las herramientas para poder resolverlo.
So he will focus in the role of the local states in their energy resilience. Quilmes has been working in a reduction plan of their impact in the energy systems and the use and trying to be more reduce the carbon footprint all year, and also focusing a lot on the clean energy system. But the more important here is the efficiency in the energy that is already being produced and used and distributed.
Frente al sistema energético que nos plantea por delante la construcción del alcance y de la eficiencia, Quilmes tiene 101 barrios populares, 101 lugares donde la distribución eléctrica que depende de una empresa, no del Estado, no es ni eficiente ni suficiente para poder llevar adelante el consumo. Frente a eso es la necesidad que planteamos desde nuestra mirada de que los gobiernos locales sean partícipes necesarios en la construcción de soluciones para estos temas, porque finalmente son los que terminan resolviéndolos sin las herramientas adecuadas.
So in Quilmes, there are 101 informal settlements with really challenging ways of accessing to energy. And the distribution depends of an enterprise, not from the state. And there is not efficient and not enough energy for consumption in these informal settlements. The local governments are trying there to be covering that gap between the private sector that is a provider and the consumers that are not having the energy that they need.
Bueno, finalmente nuestra propuesta es, y nuestro desafío, trabajar en la distribución eficiente de la energía eléctrica, en la instalación de energías alternativas en esos lugares a donde no se puede acceder, como por ejemplo paneles solares, y que finalmente sea nuestra propuesta una posibilidad concreta para el resto de países donde se repita medianamente esta situación social de conformación de la comunidad.
The main challenge, therefore, is the distribution of electric energy and also to promote the access to clean energy. and ensure that there is a model that can be replicable by different cities around the region who are facing the same challenge.
Thank you very much for pointing to the importance of the grid next to the electricity production. So both also go hand in hand in terms of resilience, having more renewable energy in the system to diversify the supply, but also making sure that actually where the energy is produced, which is often depending very locally on different assets, that actually the produced energy can be used where it's then needed. And here, let's jump, and you know where we jump to. It's Europe again, to Barcelona, and let's see how you manage energy resilience. You want to take?
Yes, thanks. So in Barcelona's metropolitan area government, we are helping the different local governments to implement this energy transition process. We think it's a key step that at the end, moreover, what the states or governments decide, that the local municipalities can take action on climate change. So we are helping them in different areas, from sustainable mobility, waste management, climate adaptation, and obviously as well with energy transition. We think it's key to have a decentralized system, and also to promote equity, so all families and all citizens can access to this new energy. In that sense, we aim to achieve the European and also the Catalan government goals. So we are trying on 2050 to reduce 100% of our emissions, but we are also working on more middle-term goals. We aim for municipalities and the local administration to be fully with renewable energies on 2030. And on that sense, we are helping the different cities to promote, to have their own photovoltaic installations in their city halls buildings, but as well in the sports centers, in the schools, and we are working to build energy communities, so that energy is used by their own, by the administration, but also is shared with other entities and citizens. In Spain, we have a law that allows us in a 2-kilometer radius to share that energy, and we are working on that. Second, also to accelerate this process, we are not relying just on public finance. We are also working with the private sector. We have tried in Barcelona's metropolitan area to do energy, to work with energy service companies in a way that they finance and do the installation and the maintenance of these public photovoltaic installations, and we provide them the access of all the benefits, of the economical benefits that we get from implementing these installations for a period of 15 years, so they can get the return of their investment. And that worked so well that we are now promoting a new batch of not just to photovoltaic installations, but also for them to help us improve the energy on the buildings to reduce the consumption. Third, we are also developing larger scale metropolitan renewable projects, and on that sense, not just photovoltaic. We want also in Barcelona's metropolitan area to have wind turbines. We don't have that much wind, but we think it's also important for the rest of the country to see that the city, the main city, has also turbines, because we have them very concentrated in small towns, and at the end, when we are talking about decentralization, it also means that. And the same as Palo Alto, we have our own energy utility company. It's Barcelona Energia. At this time, it's just providing citizens and companies access to sustainable energy. We are not producing, but we think it's the obvious next step that we can also have our own photovoltaic and energy centrals, and so we can provide access to citizens, because many citizens don't have their own roof or their own capacity to do the investment to access this energy transition. So we think it's very important for the public administration that provide that option. In that sense, in the city of Barcelona, we have a public program that we provide access to any citizen to the photovoltaic installations. They pay a fee for the year, and then they have an amount of energy that they can have access.
Thank you so much for having had a glimpse to the Barcelona metropolitan area. I think there were also interesting points. If you're a city and you want to manage the energy transition to be resilient as well, you need in the first place an instrument, and a city utility. Building a city utility is certainly something which you should consider. Second, if you don't have that, there is the option of using the power of the many, the people. So building energy communities, enabling energy communities, fostering them is certainly another option here. And also interesting to note that you combined renewable energy with energy efficiency, so not only taking the low-hanging fruits, but reaching out a bit higher. Good on you. So jumping back to Brazil, Pedro, listening to this, any reflections from your side, more academically maybe, but you're working, as you have stated, many years already with ICLEI, so what do you take from what has been said so far?
Okay, I will talk more about Brazil because notwithstanding I live in Sao Paulo, which is a city of 11 million inhabitants, the metropolitan region with 22 million inhabitants, and the macro metropolis with 35 to 40 million inhabitants. I will talk about Brazil and the way that the energy is being produced. Still, energy is being produced by hydroelectric energy. But there has been an important increase in the production with solar and wind aeolic energy, principally, mainly in the northeast of Brazil. Also here in the north, but mainly in the northeast of Brazil, where there has been a higher volume of households being served, or industries households served by solar and aeolic. Notwithstanding, there have been problems with that, mainly on gentrification, because the impacts, the way that the companies, all are private, have installed, and there's a problem with the licensing, the environmental licensing, and how, notwithstanding that people rent their small lots, the impacts of this irregular way of implementing aeolic and solar has to be very, we have to be very, I think, I don't know if the microphone is doing well, has to be very carefully looked at. It's important to say that as we are seeing with climate changes, there have been serious impacts on the hydroelectric. In 2021, we had very serious droughts, and the reservoirs were at the level where they practically couldn't serve most of the Brazilian population. And that is very important to consider. The transition that we need to do is really just, equitable, sustainable. And there's still a long way to do because you still depend on thermoelectrics also, which are very pollutant, be it on carbon or on oil, on diesel. So it's a very complex system, and it also had to be looked at a regional level, because when we talk about the southeast, there's much less solar and aeolic, for example. The south, even less. So the hydroelectric demand, and when we look at 22 metropolitan regions in the city, in the country, we have to look that a part of it is linked to transportation. So at this level, we have to consider very much asymmetries that are regional, asymmetries that are linked to vulnerable populations in most metropolitan cities, like we see here in Belém, for example. And besides that, the fact that Brazil has 5,575 municipalities with very different demographics. Something that is also worrisome because everything is getting privatized. And for example, the city of Sao Paulo, which has been of destruction of the systems. And this has also to be considered. So we have the problem that we want to be sustainable. Privatization doesn't help at this, when we look at this aspect. Climate doesn't help either. 220 million people, and I didn't come to any city because that wouldn't be fair with any of those.
Very good, very fair, so to say. And in that sense, also touching upon the element of financing here and the ability to move if you have not a city utility at hand and are actually dependent on a private company which is quite delivering centrally the energy that you are in need of, then the risk is higher, naturally. And you also related to the extreme heat, which impacts not only conventional energy forms, but also renewables. So here, a pledge for also when we extend now the renewable grid, the renewable system with grids with different renewable energy sources, think about their ability to cope with extreme cold or extreme heat, with hail, with storms and so on. But having said that, I think this demands different layers of interaction. And here I would like to look at our political leaders at the panel, the intergovernmental cooperation to achieve a resilient energy system.
Well, thank you for that question, because I know there's been a lot of concern about Americans right now and whether we're still all in, and we are. I am here to tell you we are moving forward. Federal government is a little different this year than important is how we interact with each other at the local level. One way we do that, my city and my county is represented on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. So that air district represents 7.5 million people around the San Francisco Bay, even though my city is small. But we like to think of ourselves in San Francisco. Oh. So I was just saying that we, at the Bay Area Air District, we represent 7.5 million people around San Francisco Bay. And we like to think of ourselves as a laboratory for America. We go first a lot of the times. We just passed some very aggressive no-NOx appliance rules where you won't be able to buy a NOx-emitting water heater in 2027 or a NOx-emitting HVAC in 2029. But Palo Alto is a lab within a lab. So we had a heat pump water heater program long before that. And so now we're sharing our data with the Bay Area region. So that's one way. Another way is last week we were in Rio at the Local Leaders Forum, and I was able to learn from cities around the world, and I think that's even more important now than ever, and to share what we were doing. So there's the local cities, the region, internationally. This here today is a very important thing. ICLEI is terrific, so thank you for what you do. But also, just with respect, getting back to the electric utility, one of the lovely things about being a member of the Northern California Power Agency is that we learn from each other, and we can go and jointly analyze whether a new power project makes sense, whether it's feasible economically, technically, etc. So working with that JPA is tremendous. And it's such a diverse set of members, cities, transit agencies, ports, that it really helps us do that analysis. So for me, just listening, sharing, learning, connecting at all the levels is what we need to do these days to move forward in the most efficient way we can.
obviously financing is so important. At the end, without money, there is no projects. In Europe, we got after COVID the next generation funds, and that helped us a lot. We were able to mobilize 30 million euros to implement local energy policies, but those funds are finishing. And as we are here in the COP, that it's supposed to be the one of implementation, I think it's so important to throw out the message that, moreover, all the statements that governments and regional administrations take, is so important that we ensure the financing for the local governments. It's like energy transition is not going to be cheap, and as you were saying before, we need to adapt all the system to this new reality. So it's not just about deslocalization, but also to having the financing power to implement it.
Well, thank you very much for outlining the different layers of governance here, how you work with, and indeed, ICLEI's position paper, which you have all read, I'm sure. If not, there are links to. We are calling upon a multi-level governance system in order to tackle the big struggles, the fights that are not easy to resolve. So in that sense, changing the infrastructure together with different finance options is certainly something, a must-have. But then let's look at finance, and also one of the points which we're advocating for is a just transition. So in that sense, financing not only towards changing the infrastructure, but actually having an infrastructure that is affordable, that is accessible to all. Maybe looking at the business representative here of Tampere, how do you see financially the options to turn our current energy infrastructure into a resilient energy infrastructure? What options in terms of finance does Tampere actually have, and how can the business maybe help to be better?
Yeah, maybe first of all, in Finland, we have only one electrical grid in a country, and it's owned by state. And also the gas grids are owned by state. And with the previous speaker, it was highlighted very much that energy has to be affordable, because people need to be live in a heated houses. We need light. We need electricity, and energy is a vital element of our everyday life, and that's why kind of Finland has chosen that path, that the grids has to be in hands of the government. And of course, we are in this respect, we have solved the grid financing problem in a way that it's not in the hands of businesses, and that's why we so strongly also pushing for the affordable, let's say, environments, and this waste heat utilization and all the elements around circular energy is kind of supporting that, because the more you circulate, the more resilient your system is, the more affordable the system is. And maybe the biggest challenge is what we see is that as now there's a lot of development projects trying to develop e-fuels, for instance, biofuels, and they need kind of a financing as well. So how to have a kind of enough risk money available for the projects who are kind of trying to, let's say, achieve the targets and develop these, let's say, the new energy products, and that's one of the, and of course we have seen that voluntary basis sustainability, we have gone through that path, I think, and that's why kind of legislation has a big role to our perspective to support that we start to use the more, let's say, sustainable energy products and energy systems.
Okay, thank you for staying still resilient with us. Very good. And thank you Marita, for your intervention. Looking at Argentina now, Roberto, what is your grid owned by the state, or are you having that asset in your hand? How do you finance resilient energy options in your city?
Bueno, claro, justamente por ahí venía nuestro planteo. Nosotros hoy no tenemos posibilidades ciertas de acudir a los organismos internacionales a financiar políticas de Estado como la que tenemos pensado, porque hay un gobierno nacional que niega el cambio climático, que niega las políticas de Estado para mejorar las situaciones de la comunidad, y por eso entendemos que es importante y necesario abrir la posibilidad a los gobiernos subnacionales y a los gobiernos nacionales de tener la posibilidad de presentar propuestas para el financiamiento de estas acciones que tienden a mejorar la comunidad y que tienden a mejorar las condiciones de vida, básicamente, de nuestras comunidades.
So in Argentina right now, there's not much possibilities of accessing to international finance because it's not a state policy to foster that. And the national state is denying that policy and making it really hard for local and subnational governments. So the intention is to try to push the agenda and the possibilities for the subnational governments to make it easier for them to access finance as well, to try to pay for better systems and more resilient systems.
Thank you. And in that sense, you are spot on to be at COP advocating for exactly that access to finance. Maybe then over to Pedro, and a question to you, maybe not related to finance, or are you able to speak about finance? Have you observed as a researcher options on finance that you would recommend here the people on the panel?
Look, as I mentioned before, the privatization means that the private companies must look for their funds and assets. No? We have a strong system where you have a control of the dynamics of the system itself with hydroelectrics and the other ways. So if there is a cut because of a problem with the system, this is connected, the whole country is connected because most of the energy is still dependent on hydroelectric. It's around 70%. So the national companies, they were privatized. So how they get their funds, all that depends very much in terms of the need to expand the system. It's also important to remember that within the Brazilian reality, the people who use a very small quantity of kilowatts, they are subsidized. So it's different the way that middle class pays for electricity than the most vulnerable. And we have to think that most of the population in Brazil earns very little. So the reality is that an important part of the energy produced and used is being subsidized. But I wanted also to stress a little bit about decarbonization again and bringing up the issue of the fact that when you look at the Brazilian case, it is a leader when it comes to mixing the fuels, no? The use of sugar cane is very important. It is one of the most important assets for exportation, but also for the use to mix, to use with in cars. So now Brazilians were very inventive at that time, in the 70s already. And myself, I use ethanol, but ethanol, it has a less, you use more ethanol for a kilometer than with gasoline. So people still look to their pockets and do not look to sustainability. On the other hand, you have cars that are, I'm talking about cars, no, but also trucks are always with diesel, no? but cars that use petroleum and ethanol, for example. And now, well, there's an increasing number of people beginning to buy electric car, but also linked with biofuel and all that. So it's important because when we're talking about cities, and as I mentioned, the cities, the states that had companies, most of them privatized. But when you come to decarbonization in cities, the essential issue is that the number of cars that circulate, and that could be reduced, for example, with more investments in public transportation. There's a small number of cities that has a subway system, like São Paulo, for example, but still very insufficient facing the population. And you have other ways also of transportation, VLTs and other, that have been improving the access of population. Because we always have to remember in countries in the global south that people of low income live in the peripheries. No, it's the opposite of the of the suburban logic in the United States, and that makes that the traveling is very long. No, and this obviously has still a very a big need of oil, of petroleum, to move from their homes to their jobs.
Thank you for pointing out actually the dependency on fossil fuels, which actually led to ethanol in the first place, but also for us to think about, in terms of resilient, where does my energy come from? Am I able to supply myself? What are the value chains? We discussed quickly on circular economy. These are all aspects which we can and should think about. I'm afraid we need to wrap up already, and I would like to ask each speaker very shortly, in 1 minute, to either share a fact in this debate which you haven't shared yet, but on your sheets, which are plenty, or looking into the future, an element that you want to tackle next in your city because you find it in connection to building a resilient energy system very important. Can we get this microphone here, and then we are off to go?
Yeah, very quickly. Obviously, building resilient energy system is so important, especially now that we are relying more and more in electricity. In Spain, April 25th, we got a blackout. So for an entire day, we had no energy. So it was an eye-opening on how important the electricity is. For major services, no, from mobility, for communications, even for emergency systems. So we think decentralization is the key. Also, for having more reliant systems to produce local. So we had the Ukrainian crisis, so we didn't have access to the Russian gas, and that increased a lot the energy prices in Spain. So this decentralization is obviously the key, but it comes with its own challenges. As we pointed on this talk, financing is so important, but it's also to build an equalitarian and equity system so everyone can benefit from this energy transition.
Well, we also get most of our electricity in Palo Alto from hydropower, and we also have droughts. So resiliency means we also get power from wind and solar, and then also what was discussed earlier, increased efficiency at all points, whether it's the appliances that people buy or the systems themselves with the grid technology, on and on. But what I want to really mention in my last point is looking at the future, because that's what we do in Palo Alto, and we've caused a little bit of a challenge for the future with AI data centers. I love the AI modeling that can help us with some of our climate challenges, but the data centers that it requires are a climate challenge in and of themselves. And I'm a patent attorney. I've done patent law for 35 years, and I have watched technology develop, and this will develop. But the demand will develop also. So I urge all of you to think now about how we can ask our corporate partners to work with us to develop the most energy efficient data centers possible. Because if we can't do that, a lot of our other measures will not matter. Now, because I'm a technology nerd, I can tell you that we are going to improve our algorithms so they don't require as much energy. We are improving the chips so they can operate at higher temperatures so you don't need as much water cooling. We are improving the interconnections between the chips that we will move from copper wires, which generate resistance and thus heat, and thus the need for cooling, and thus the need for energy is going to change to fiber optics. But there will still be, I predict, an almost insatiable demand for the electricity to power these. So I encourage that. I'm actually looking next year to convene a conversation around this with local governments, with corporations, internationally. So anyone who wants to participate in that, please see me. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
I have 3 words. We need to improve sustainability with equitability and with social justice. But with that, besides that, what we really have to look at inequalities in the sense that even if we would love that a larger population could have solar energy, the problem is their income. And still that the equipments are too expensive. We have an interesting, at this moment, the present government has begun to put solar energy in popular housing because people cannot afford to it. So that is also very important. And talking about data centers, we have to talk about water and energy because both. And Brazil is looking, many countries are seeking to have data centers in Brazil because of it is cheaper. But we have to be very careful, not just simply jump into that because we may jump into a very dangerous reality.
It's easy to build on what Vicky said, and especially I'm a technology guy in a way. I believe that technology is kind of it's good for us if we kind of try towards good things with the technology. And a lot of technology development is needed, and I hope that also the support for the technology development is ongoing, and we find, let's say, ways of financing the startups and around the energy systems. It's not the most sexiest, let's say, industry as such. We have seen at least, so it's much easier to invest on AI companies and things like that, but companies who are kind of developing energy technology around energy are not that sexy, but let's push for that. The other thing what I would like to highlight is that somebody's trash can be somebody's gold, and therefore, let's say, CO2 is also, let's say, it can be stored, and it has actually quite a good qualities if you store it into concrete, etc. So there are a lot of developments at the moment ongoing where, let's say, the storing the bad guy on a good way is one of the solutions. So let's be innovative and let's think about the circularity and the waste aspect as such.
Bueno, tomando un poco lo que algunos plantearon, creemos que desde el sur global no se puede hablar de la construcción de una ciudad sustentable y equitativa, sin igualdad y sin justicia social, como nos gusta decir a nosotros, que tiene que ver con la incorporación de los más vulnerables a las nuevas tecnologías, a la energía alternativa, y para eso un Estado fuerte, el Estado local siendo el que proponga y justamente generando financiamiento para que esos sectores puedan tener energía de mejor calidad.
So from the global south, we think that a sustainable city is not sustainable without social justice, and that a just transition means inclusion to vulnerable communities, to resilient energy systems, and that includes renewable, and that implies that the state must be the one who promotes access to energy and resilient energy systems.
Well, thank you very much for outlining these different aspects. I want to do two things. One thing, point to this QR code, because if you scan that, you will jump into a guide which we have developed, the Urban Transition Mission Center has developed, colleagues from ICLAI have developed to bring to you, and many aspects that you have mentioned are captured here in a structured way as well, for you to take a look, to be guided as a city in how to plan, how to implement resilient energy systems. Having said that, secondly, I want to thank very much the panelists coming from all over the world, jumping back and forth the pond and sharing with us their good practice for you. I hope you enjoyed the session, and if you still have a question, and I was rude not asking you for if you have a question, now it's your time to grab them. Before that, we will do a photo, but then please talk to the panelists, they're experts. Thank you so much. See you later.